Welcome to Oh Hell No with Nicole.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Oh Hell No podcast. Today I have author Karen C.L. Anderson. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yes, she is the author of a book called Difficult Mothers, Adult Daughters, A Guide for Separation, Liberation, and Inspiration. So we're going to talk about Karen, and then we're going to get into her book and find out what she's doing. So before I get into, finding out a little bit about you, I just wanted to tell you this quick story. So at work, one of my coworkers was having an issue with his wife. She just found out that her mom passed, and she's estranged from her mom. So, they're going through the motions of everything that's happening and just trying to, figure out what to do. And then there's like a whole bunch of layer of, family issues and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, just listening to him tell me, some of the things that were going on with his lady, I was like, oh my God, you need to get Karen's book. So I told him about the book. And I was like, she has to read this book because I'm telling you, it's really going to help her, get through some of these issues. So he went looking for the book at Barnes and Nobles, and it was sold out, honey.
That's pretty awesome.
Right? So they had to order it for him. And, he's pretty excited about getting this book. So I just felt like, oh, my goodness, isn't it just crazy how things just come together? And, you're able to help someone who, has been struggling with something for so many years. So yeah. I just had to share that with you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to ask you is, tell us about what kept you excited and hopeful as a child, despite all of the, chaos.
Oh, wow. What an awesome question. I had a very vivid internal life, I guess you'd say. I loved to read, and for me, being able to sort of hole up in my bedroom and read was everything. I also, and then to this day, I think I still sort of maintain this sort of naivete, I guess, in a good way, where like something as simple as, I wonder what's going to be in the mailbox today excites me.
Oh, I like that.
And that, that's something that I can remember feeling as a child. And so it's sort of like that, anything is possible. Something cool might happen today.
I like that. That's a good way to be. So when did you realize that you had, I'm going to say, a negative relationship with your mom? And correct me if you want to use a different word.
Well, difficult, I guess, is the word I would use.
Okay.
I can't say it was like one single moment, but everything kind of came to a head for me at the end of 2010, which isn't really all that long ago, relatively speaking. I'm 55. So, there had been difficulties up until that point, but that was sort of a turning point for me when I, at that point, decided to tell her that I no longer wanted her to be part of my life.
So when you were growing up and you were a young lady, did you at any point feel like, oh my gosh, she's so difficult? Like, what's wrong with this lady? Or was it just always just trying to be the good daughter? And, what was that like?
Yeah, and I think, I described this a little bit in the book. When I was, after I got out of college and I had a job, I was living at home and I live in Connecticut, and I was working in New York City. But I was living with my mom, and she was divorced at the time, so it was just the two of us. And I was, and this would have been sort of like mid-'80s. And we kind of became best friends, but in what I now know was not a very healthy way.
Yeah.
And, a lot of this is just sort of hindsight. Like at the time, I didn't think that there was anything wrong. But in hindsight, what I recognize is that we were very sort of codependent and unhealthily emotionally involved with each other, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So what I started to recognize as I grew older is that anytime that I wanted to have my own life, my own friends, my own things that I was just sort of doing on my own, that she didn't really like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't get married until I was nearly 35. And it was after I got married that I noticed, I don't know, things just seemed to start to change. And the more that I decided that, I want to do what I want to do. And it's what's interesting is one of the things that I think sort of caused a real rift, but I didn't realize it at the time, is when I started blogging. And, I can't speak for my mom, but the impression that I got is that, she didn't like that I was putting myself out into the world in a public way.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she felt threatened or if she felt jealous or what, but that was not, she was very uncomfortable with that. And blogging for me was a lifeline. And so, I wasn't about to give it up.
Yeah. And that's funny that you say that, because my next question was going to be, did the relationship ever affect you following your passions, things that you wanted to do?
Well, I think maybe. I mean, so I started blogging in 2009, again, which isn't that long ago, relatively speaking. Mm-hmm. And up until that point, I don't think I had ever really truly pursued something that was a passion that she wouldn't approve of, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I had started doing some freelance writing in the early 2000s, and I did notice that she would approve of projects that she thought were good, like writing the website copy for a bank, or something like that. But when I remember I wrote an article about getting bra fittings, mm-hmm. and I actually posed for a photo. It wasn't my face. You couldn't see my face, and it was not in any way,
like Playboy.
Yeah, no,
right.
It was nothing like that. But she just lost it. I mean, she didn't like it. And so, there were those sort of glimmers of her wanting to disapprove. And I'll never forget, I wrote my very first book, which has nothing to do with mothers, and really is not, it's no great work of literature or anything. But I remember when I told her that I was writing that book, she would, it's like she constantly forgot. Mm-hmm. And, just didn't really have, it's like she wanted to just block out that part of me, the part that wanted to express herself.
The creative part.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I have theories about all of that now that I didn't have then, but yeah.
Wow. So what was the breaking point? Like, what happened? If you can tell us, if not, that's fine.
No, I can tell you. It is interesting. So that first book that I wrote was basically, it was sort of based on a blog that I had started, mm-hmm. About self-acceptance, and specifically around my body and body image and weight. And it was something that I had struggled with my whole life. And I decided to self-publish a book based on that blog. And as it came closer to the publication of that book, she became sort of increasingly upset with me. And and there was a bunch of other stuff going on too, which, personally with her and her husband at the time, which I'm not going to get into. But so we had a visit at Thanksgiving of 2010 that was kind of rough. The things that happened weren't, there was some unpleasant things that happened. And we ended up leaving. My husband and I ended up leaving early from that visit. And when I got home, a few days later, she sent me an email, And in that email, she said, among other things, that she was very disappointed in the person that I'd become. And that was like a knife in my heart, because at that point in my life, I was doing things that I was really proud of. I was really happy with who I'd become. And for her to say that was just, it was devastating.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I wrote back to her and I said, based on what you've said in this email, I'm asking you not to contact me again.
Yeah. So that's the divorce letter.
That was the divorce letter.
So I was going to ask you, what exactly, what are some of the things that you can write in a divorce letter? Because I know you said that your mother also gave your grandmother a divorce letter. So here it is again, history repeating itself. And, so basically you just told her, don't contact me. And that's it.
Yeah, that was it. And it's funny that you should say that, because in hindsight, I recognized that what I said, I didn't want to engage in a back and forth. I didn't want to defend myself. I didn't want to prove anything. I just wanted to end it.
Yeah.
And not have well, you said this and you shouldn't have done, all that kind of stuff. I didn't want to go there. And in the past, that was my pattern, was to constantly be defending myself and to say, oh, well, you misunderstood, or you didn't get it, or I didn't mean that, or, those kinds of things. And, I was done.
Yeah. So what was the first thing that happened that let you know that you were in a better place, after all of this? Do you remember any one thing that happened and then you kind of was like, wow, I'm doing okay?
Well, what's interesting is that while I now recognize that what I did in that moment was set a really great boundary, I was still consumed with the story that I was telling myself about her and about me and about us. And so while I had sort of set this boundary, I was not happy. And I was still in the midst of a lot of blame and, wanting to tell the story of how she'd done me wrong. And so it really wasn't, and again, it's kind of fascinating. I've been a writer, my whole adult life. And I sort of took this foray into life coaching, which the training for that was amazing on so many levels. And I learned a lot about myself. And what was fascinating is that there I was sort of thinking that I had wrapped all my mother's stuff up in a neat little, package. And yet it was sort of coming back to haunt me. And it was during the training that I took to become a life coach that that's when I started to really heal it. So that was probably 3 years after I had divorced my mother.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So, how did you get through the process of writing this book? Was it hard for you to kind of have to think back to, some of those times in your life to just put it all down? Or was this something that you've been working on for a long time? Did you do it after? When did you write the book?
Well, what's interesting is that I wrote a book in 2015, which the current book is basically a revised, expanded, more nuanced, I've got more wisdom to share version of a book that I wrote in 2015. So, and it's interesting how this is all sort of tied together in some kind of weird way. As I said, I was in sort of this life coach mode. And I wrote, so the book that I wrote in 2015, which was called The Peaceful Daughter's Guide to Separating from a Difficult Mother, I wrote as a client attraction book. And what I didn't realize at the time, and this goes into patterns that I didn't realize I had, which are, I think everybody on the planet has similar patterns for various reasons, but like I have to prove myself, right? I'm not worthy unless I'm making six figures, skinny, like what all the things that we say, okay, if I do this, then I'll be worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And life coaching was one of those tools that I was using to prove my worth. This is kind of weird. I don't think I've ever said this out loud. And writing is my thing. Writing is what lights me up, and telling stories. And I love doing that. And I was using the life coaching as sort of a way to, as I said, prove my worth. So I wrote that book, The Peaceful Daughter's Guide, as a way to promote my business, not realizing ultimately that I really don't like being a life coach.
Wow. Get out of here.
And so amazingly though, that book sold extremely well. And, got a lot of attention for it. And, I did do some coaching, and I get questions all the time from people, and I love answering the questions of, for women who are struggling, but I don't necessarily want to coach them. And I don't think that necessarily mother issues are a good thing to necessarily coach people around.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was, as I said, like in the 3 years since that book came out, I did coach a lot of women. I answered lots of questions. My own experience, my own sort of wisdom around this issue deepened and changed in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And I got the attention of an agent and got a traditional book deal. And I was thrilled that I got the opportunity to rewrite this book, not as a client attraction book necessarily, but more as I just want to help you.
Right. That is amazing. Look at that. It really is. So I love so many, there were some things that I jotted down that were like, oh my God, this is so real. Because even though, it stems from issues with your mom and stuff like that, like it can be relatable to so many other things, Mm-hmm. So I wrote down some of this stuff. So the key is to take a radical stand, give up being a victim of your childhood, and become willing to see how you've been the one keeping these hurts alive so that you can finally begin making different choices. And this is something that I always say to people. I think it's so ridiculous. And I can say this because, my mom was very strict when I was coming up. I have two sisters, and she was no joke because she was a young mom. So she didn't want that to happen for us. And mm-hmm. She's from the Caribbean, and she was just like, you guys just need to stay in the house and not go anywhere. That was what she knew, mm-hmm. So she did the best that she could. And as I became older, and I had kids, then it became clear to me like, wow, she was only doing the best that she knew how to do. Mm-hmm. And you're only with your parents for a short time if you really look at the span of most people's lives, right?
Yeah.
So when I read this, and it's like, give up being the victim of your childhood. Like, yeah, let that shit go. I know it's hard when you're like in the middle of it and you're just thinking back to all of this stuff, but you really have to at some point figure out who you are, who you want to be, and where you're going, and not really hang on to the things of the past. So yeah. I loved that in the book.
Thank you.
There were so many things. Like I was like, I don't want to kill her with all this stuff from her book. She's gonna be like, all right, I wrote it, enough.
It's funny. One thing about that, she did the best she could line.
Yeah.
I think is really helpful for anyone to say, to make it sort of a both and, right? Because I think we have this tendency, right? Like, well, I can't blame my parents anymore, so I'm going to blame myself. Mm-hmm. And blame in and of itself is not helpful.
No.
And so when we can acknowledge, you know what? Yeah, I did suffer a little bit as a kid. and she did the best she could.
Yes.
Right? Like that gives us the opportunity to tell the truth about what we experienced.
Yes.
And not blame her anymore.
Right. Like, yeah, owning that feeling, and just like you say something in the book about that, like, just, if you're angry, be angry, like, let the emotions like run through you, like, don't try to suppress them. And that's true. Like, yeah, say, wow, my mom was so strict. She never let me go outside and play with my friends and do this and do that. And that was the best that she could have done. That's what she knew to do. So, okay, I didn't get to go outside and it wasn't fair, but hey, that's what it was,
Yep.
So it's just, and also I like this part too. You also get to see this poor woman for who she really is, just another vulnerable, somewhat confused person on this planet who was just trying to find her way as best she could. And I feel like when you get old enough to know a lot more details about your parents' lives, you start to realize that, oh my God, this person is just like me, like just a person who happened to get pregnant, and now she's pregnant, and now she has to work, and maybe she's a single mom, and things are hard, and she can't go out with her friends because she's 22 and she has kids, and you know what I mean? You start thinking
Totally.
like, holy cow. So I always tell my friends, parents are just people who decided to have kids, and whatever baggage that they have, it's coming right along with everything else. And it just takes them to, say, oh man, I have kids. I have to be responsible. Let me get my stuff together for them to do the right things, right?
I don't have children. I have stepkids.
Yeah.
But I chose not to have children. And I do know that somewhere along the line, I was like, holy, like,
yeah,
if I'd had kids.
Right.
But, the other thing, and this is why I really wanted to rewrite this book, is because I started to understand a greater sort of cultural truth, which is that in a culture that does not value women equally, there is a pain, it's a generational pain that gets passed down that shows up as fear and jealousy.
Yeah.
And it's that, we just want to be who we are. We want to be authentic. We want to be our real, true selves. And in a culture where, if we're outside of the quote unquote norm, right? Our mothers are like, in the back of their mind, this is all unconscious. They're in the back of their mind going, if I don't protect her from that, like if she's too fat, like that was a message that I got a lot, right? It's like, if my body isn't right, she won't attract a man and she won't be taken care of, which, okay, yes, now in these days, right, we can make our own money. We're cool like that. But 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
And those messages, that is like still in our DNA. So that fear is, I have to protect her at all costs from anything that will make her deemed unacceptable.
Yeah.
By culture. So that there's that fear that's then, goes into squashing us and keeping us inside when we want to go out and play with our friends, or however it looks.
Right.
And then what happens is when we are old enough and we're out there saying, oh, hell no, to use your podcast title, when we're out there saying, oh, hell no, I'm not going to do it that way, our mothers, again, unconsciously, are jealous. Like, I didn't have that freedom.
Right.
And this, and if a mother isn't aware, if she's not, taking care of herself, that jealousy comes out and it looks like criticism and, the nagging and, all those things. So those are, to me, understanding that dynamic is so helpful.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I have a daughter, and I try to like not be too overbearing and not put too much of myself onto her. But sometimes it's really hard. It's just like a fine line, you know? Like today, I said, "Oh, you should wear these cute shoes with, your outfit."
How old is she?
She's 8. So she goes downstairs and she puts on these big boots. And I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be 75 degrees and you're going to be wearing boots and your feet are going to be hot. Okay, But then as I'm saying it, I'm like, shut up, leave her alone. Like, just, if that's what she wants to wear, let her wear it. She'll figure it out that her feet are hot,
Yeah.
But it's like, I can't help myself. So she wore the big boots anyway. And I was like, you really need to learn how to like put yourself together when you leave the house. And then again, in my head, I'm saying, stop it. That's not right. But it's just so hard because you want them to look a certain way and present themselves a certain way. But at the same time, you got to kind of just let them be who they are. Yeah. And it's like a really hard thing because I don't want to be that mom where she's like, oh, my mom's always trying to, make me like her or, I don't want her to be like that. So.
Well, it's interesting, too, because, and I remember feeling this way even as a stepmother, which is other people are going to judge me if they see my kid wearing boots in hot weather or, whatever. Like,
yep.
So, yeah, we don't want that, right? We don't want to have that judgment or that. And I know for my mom that she was, again, maybe unconsciously terrified that other people were going to think she was a bad mother if I was fat. Right? Yeah. And I wasn't even fat. Like when I look back at the pictures, I'm like, I don't know what she was worried about, but, but she had, it was the thing in my family. Fat was bad.
Yeah.
So
it's so hard, but, yeah, I can really understand a lot of the stuff that you touched on and just trying, not to be too much as a mom, just trying to walk that fine line and just.
Well, I think there's also just that we can have fun with it. Like, it can be such a fraught, discussion or, topic. Oh, my difficult mother, or, I'm having problems with my daughter even. But there really can just, if we kind of just like relax a little bit, we can realize that, we can say to our kids, you know what, I just realized I'm doing this because I'm afraid that people might think that I'm a bad mom if I let you wear boots. And I know that's crazy, but like, that's kind of what happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And then it's all okay. And they're like, yeah, Mom, I think you're right. I think I should maybe wear sandals instead.
Well, not this one. She came home and said, well, guess what? Today when I went outside, the grass was wet and everybody's foot got wet except for mine because I was wearing boots. I'm like, okay. So she's a real piece of work. I don't know. She's something else.
They say that kids who like talk back and like learn how to say no, like they're more successful.
Yeah, I hope that she will be successful because with that mouth, something's got to give. But I mean, she gets it from me, so I'm like, what can I do? So, do you feel like, and this is like a strange question, but not really. Do you feel like this is your purpose? And are you okay with what you had to go through to be able to help people through your writing and even your coaching that you've done? And, like the passages in your book where you have Q&A, like, do you feel like you had to go through all of these difficult times and moments with your own mom to be the messenger, like one of the messengers for this to help people?
I'll say, oh, hell yes.
Well, that's good.
I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I've come to I talk about emotion a lot, right? And how important it is to feel your feelings. And one of the reasons that I am so, that's such an important thing for me is that when you like, if you know what shame feels like, if you know what anger feels like, and the more you practice feeling your emotions, you also then start to know what joy feels like. And you know what it feels like when you're in the flow of what you're meant to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've become very attuned to that. And I can feel it literally this second as this whole time we've been talking, and it makes me know this is what I meant to do.
Yeah. I love
and,
that.
It's like, it's energetic.
Mm-hmm.
And, on a certain level, it almost sometimes brings me to tears in a good way.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So absolutely, I know this was, all of this was, this is my gift.
Yeah. So as an author and entrepreneur, what are some professional struggles that you've faced that you can share?
A big one was thinking that I had to coach and have a business that looked a certain way. And there has been huge freedom in letting that go. And saying that I want to make my living as a writer, not as a coach.
Wow.
And to develop my latest thing is I've got a Patreon account. I don't know if you know what Patreon is. And it's a platform for writers, musicians, artists, all kinds of people who have things to share and who want to get paid for those things. And it's amazing because you can, you sort of have like different levels of patronage. So, for as little as $2 a month, someone can become one of my patrons and they can ask questions or just read the things that I've written about having a healthy mother-daughter relationship, or how to, navigate being in no contact with your mom, right? Or what kind of boundaries do you want to have? Or, if you're a mother, and I sometimes do, I have mothers who say, you know what, I don't want to be the difficult mother.
Right.
And I love that there are platforms like that out there that, allow me to get paid for the work that I do in the way that I want to do it.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I never heard of that account. So you just shared something great with me and the audience.
And, there are a lot of podcasters who have Patreon accounts.
Oh, nice. I better get me one.
Yeah, you should get you one. Totally.
For real. So, so you definitely do not do coaching like the way you thought you had to do it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I do have a community, a small sort of growing community in that, and it's sort of like on Facebook in a secret group for people who want to have that kind of, I don't know what we call it, like not on the spot. Like, it's not like I'm sitting there 24/7 ready to coach people on Facebook, but for people like who want to share, you know what, my mother said this, I need some help. And, they can post there and they can get support, not like waiting for a coaching call or something like that. I check in there once a day or so and answer people's questions and, give the kind of support that they need and want. And that suits me and it suits them.
That's pretty cool.
That's like kind of the extent of the coaching that I do these days. Nice.
So what's next for you?
A memoir.
Oh.
Yeah, I think the thing that I've been doing, and I've been sharing some of this writing actually on Patreon. I've been exploring maternal lineage in general, my own. And, for example, my husband's mother died long before I met my husband. And I've just been very sort of fascinated with her and who she was. And the idea that there are women who, for whatever reason, never got to tell their story. And, being able to see women in our maternal lineages, right? Whether they were our mothers or our grandmothers and so on down the line, or, as I said, like a husband's mother or other mother figures, and being able to see them as whole, complete women. And as I said, it was kind of fascinating to explore my husband's mother's story, and based on things that I had heard, stories that I had been told about her. And I wrote a piece about her, and it was like, so how do you write something about somebody you never met? But so I guess what it is, it's either a memoir or a series of essays about women. And the working title that I have for this project is, it's a letter to the daughter that I chose not to have.
Oh, cool. I like that. Nice.
So there's a lot of little stories about, I have stepmothers, I have mothers-in-law, I have, lots of mother figures in my life that I think their stories are all sort of intertwined in some way, and it's fascinating to me.
Wow, that is fascinating. Do you ever regret not having your own children?
Nope.
Good for you. No, I love that. I love when someone makes a decision about their life and they stick to it and they're comfortable with it. And, I love it. I think it's amazing.
Yeah. And it's nice, I think it's good to be an example of that, of being, for women to be able to have made a choice and not have regrets.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, it ain't for everyone, Sometimes I'm like, what the? But. So, okay, so this is the Oh Hell No podcast. So I usually ask all my guests to share an Oh Hell No moment that they've had in life. It could be, through work, personal, anything that just made you say, oh hell no. It could be a good oh hell no. It could be a bad oh hell no. But you got to share.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure there's like a whole bunch of them, and I'm
Absolutely.
like, oh no, I'm on the spot. Well, all right, I guess I'll just have to go back to that moment when my mom sent me an email saying, I'm disappointed in the person you've become. And, I didn't say in my head at that moment, oh hell no, but that's basically it, was oh hell no.
Yeah.
I am becoming the best I've ever been, and I continue to. And oh hell no, if you can't see that, I'm sorry.
Yep, that's a great oh hell no moment.
It really was. And I will say it's not like we've been completely estranged since then. We have had moments. I think the a turning point for me has been being able to come around to the point where my door is open, and I have really good boundaries.
Yeah.
So, but oh hell no, you're not treating me that way.
Yeah, that's right. It's like sometimes you say, some people you have to love from a distance, So it's like, hey, how you doing? And keep it moving, because I don't know. I feel like our family members are just people with the title sister, brother, mother, and it could go left or it can go, all the way right. So you just never know,
And I will say I do, and I can say this unconditionally, I love my mom.
Of course, I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just sometimes relationships are hard, and sometimes the people make it hard. So you got to know how to navigate them. That's all.
Totally.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really enjoyed this conversation. And
I did too.
Yeah, this is great. So tell us, where we can keep up with what you're doing and how we can go to your, what is it called? Patronage site?
Patreon. Yeah. So if you go to my website, which is kclanderson.com, you can sign up for my newsletter. You can click, there's like a thing that, across the top where you can click to see what the whole Patreon thing is all about. But yeah, all roads, if you need me, I'm at kclanderson.com, and you can, learn everything you need to know there.
Awesome.